Who really governs Britain? That's the question no one in Westminster wants you asking. But in the shadows of political theatre, beneath the noise of staged speeches and hollow slogans, the truth is staring us in the face. Decisions of national consequence are no longer being made in public, nor with consent, but in hushed, unelected corridors where elites assume they know better than the electorate. What we're watching unfold under Keir Starmer's leadership isn't pragmatic politics. It's a deliberate attempt to bypass democracy in the service of resubjugating Britain to foreign rule under the European Union. And the public deserves to be furious. Make no mistake, this isn't hyperbole. This is the raw reality of what happens when political class arrogance goes unchecked. Starmer's secretive plans to reforge binding agreements with Brussels, restoring European Court of Justice oversight, reviving mass EU migration through a youth mobility smokescreen, and handing British taxpayer money to EU military initiatives, represent nothing short of a constitutional coup. The fact that this was to be announced under the disguise of a routine diplomatic summit is as insulting as it is dangerous. It shows a government that has grown comfortable with deception, allergic to accountability, and fundamentally out of step with the people it claims to serve. The Brexit referendum wasn't just a vote to leave the EU, it was a line drawn in the sand between ordinary citizens and the political machine that long dismissed them. That line is being erased. Starmer and his handlers have not only ignored the democratic mandate to sever legal and political ties with the EU, they've actively worked to reverse it through backroom deals. And worse still, they've done so under a cloak of ambiguity, hoping the electorate wouldn't notice. But now they have. And they're not going to forget it. Starmer's defenders will predictably call this cooperation. They'll say it's maturity. They'll roll out the tired old clichés about global challenges, shared values, and stability. But these buzzwords are weapons of misdirection. The real agenda is control. Control over laws, borders, and economic sovereignty, handed back to the very institutions Britain voted to escape. And the method? Undemocratic. Unaccountable. Unforgivable. What's most striking is the desperation within Starmer's camp to keep the optics clean while the substance is anything but. The language surrounding this supposed agreement was engineered not to inform the public, but to pacify them. Legal terminology was softened. Migration schemes were rebranded. Oversight mechanisms were buried beneath diplomatic fluff. This wasn't transparency, it was manipulation. And that is a far greater danger to democracy than any populist movement ever has been. Enter Nigel Farage. Like him or loathe him, at least he understands the stakes. He's not pretending. He's not hiding behind spin. He saw the betrayal coming and acted, loudly, boldly, and yes, controversially. His intervention with the king, while unconventional, was a necessary shock to the system. It forced the lid off a deal that was never meant to see the light of day. It broke the omerta that Westminster had built around Brexit reversal. And it threw a match into the oily complacency of an establishment that thought it had finally silenced the will of the people. The meltdown that followed at Downing Street wasn't just political theatre, it was the unraveling of a carefully choreographed illusion. Starmer's anger wasn't rooted in principle, it was panic. Panic that the public might finally understand what had been done in their name without their consent. Panic that someone had pierced the veil of secrecy. Panic that the elite had overplayed their hand. For a man who prides himself on composure, Starmer's reported tantrums exposed exactly what he fears: scrutiny. Let's call this what it is, an attempted re-entry into the EU through the back door, driven by technocrats and lawyers who never accepted the referendum result. And let's be equally clear about what's at stake. If these sorts of clandestine negotiations become the norm, the very foundation of our democracy crumbles. Parliamentary scrutiny becomes a formality. Voter input becomes irrelevant. National sovereignty becomes negotiable. That's not progress. That's regression to a time when power was inherited, not earned. When decisions were made for the people, not by them. This country didn't vote for a slow drift back into EU submission. It didn't vote for British laws to be subject to foreign courts, or for migration policy to be rewritten without debate, or for military funding to be outsourced to foreign agendas. It voted for self-governance. For accountability. For leaders who listen. And what it got instead was a prime minister who believes he can outsmart the people by disguising betrayal as diplomacy. The question now is not whether Starmer can recover from this, it's whether the public will tolerate it. Whether we will continue to let a political class that thrives on opacity dictate the course of our nation. Or whether we will demand better. The answer should be obvious. If democracy is to mean anything at all, it must mean the right to choose, and the right to reject, those who claim to lead us. No more hiding. No more spinning. No more backroom plots to undo the vote of a sovereign people. Britain deserves better than this, and if our leaders won't provide it, the people will demand it for themselves.